When autism strategies are making your child worse instead of better, there's usually one missing piece. In this video, I'm going to teach you 5 more subtle differences between autism and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder so that you can finally understand why traditional autism supports don't do anything for your kid and get them the brain-based support that they actually need. Now, before you think that FASD is some rare, obscure developmental delay that only affects a small portion of us, think again. I'll link my video here where I talk about how FASD is actually up to 2.5 times more common than autism in the United States. This is everywhere. But today, let's first dive into the subtle differences that explain why those sticker charts never worked and are never going to work. The first sign that looks like autism but could be FASD is sensory processing issues. Now, both groups of people might struggle with things like loud noises or bright lights or certain textures, but here's the key difference. In autism, sensory patterns are more predictable and consistent. You'll notice that they're often linked to stimming behaviors. For example, the child who covers their ears and rocks at the same time when it's too loud. The sensory input and the coping mechanism are working together. But in FASD, sensory responses are way more unpredictable and less tied to self-soothing. One day, loud music is fine, and the next day it leads to a complete meltdown, and they don't have a consistent way to deal with that. Here's the tricky part for parents. This inconsistency in sensory issues, some days it's a problem, some days it's not, can be misread as attention seeking, even to experienced parents who know better. Some days my daughter loves eating meat as like the protein in her meals, and other days it will literally make her throw up at the dining room table. There's no way to predict which day is which day. That's fun. Number 2 is communication differences. This one can fool even professionals because both groups can struggle to communicate their needs clearly. In autism, speech can sound robotic, rehearsed, or overly formal. If you think of a 6-year-old who sounds like they're reading from a textbook or repeats phrases that they've heard somewhere else. But kids with FASD, their speech can often sound more fluent and natural sounding. Both of my kids were early speakers. There was no warning signs at all when it came to their speech. So you might be thinking, what is the problem with FASD and communication? Here's the issue. Because they can speak so well, they often sound much more capable than they actually are. So when my 5-year-old could have a 20-minute conversation with pretty much anyone on pretty much any topic, but couldn't follow a 2-step direction of like grab your shoes and then grab your jacket, that was really confusing to me, and it's a red flag for FASD screenings. The third subtle difference between autism and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder traits is difficulty with attention. While both groups have difficulties staying on task and paying attention, the pattern is totally different. Kids with autism might have terrible attention for boring stuff, but watch them with their special interest and they can hyper-focus for hours. FASD attention seems to be poor across all areas, not just the boring stuff. They struggle to focus even on things that they enjoy. It's like their brain's attention system is consistently unreliable. This is why the ADHD component for my kids was glaringly obvious right away, but it would take years for us to understand FASD. The fourth difference between autism and fetal alcohol spectrum disorder traits can get really confusing, and that's nonverbal communication. Both groups miss social cues, but in opposite ways. Oftentimes, autistic kids have what we call a flat affect. They avoid eye contact, and they don't show a lot of emotion on their face, even if they're feeling a lot of emotion inside. But FASD kids can appear super expressive and animated. They might look you in the eye, they smile, they seem to really get it, but they're still missing the underlying social cues. But here's where adults can get fooled. They assume a child understands a social situation because they look engaged, but then their behavior tells a totally different story, and that's confusing. For example, I've watched my daughter be in social situations and she will copy all the correct things. She will make eye contact and smile and laugh and even contribute verbally some. But when asked just a moment later what the conversation was about, what the topic was, she has no idea. And the fifth subtle difference between autism and FASD is sleep problems. If you have a child with either condition, you are probably intimately aware of the issues with sleep. But here, the root causes are different. In autism, sleep issues are often caused by sensory sensitivities or changes in routine. You change the sheets, you change the routine, boom, no sleep. But FASD sleep problems are often due to nervous system dysregulation from that prenatal alcohol exposure. Their brain's arousal system is just wired differently, so also no sleep. So there you have it, 5 subtle differences that could explain why your child doesn't meet the typical autism mold. If any of these resonated with you, I encourage you to trust your gut and seek out professionals that understand both conditions. Now, transparently, in my experience, that hasn't been easy to find, but I will link some resources in the video description of where you could start. If this video helped clarify anything for you, be sure to check out this video where I talk about how common FASD actually is. It will blow your mind. And if you know another parent who's struggling with confusing behaviors, share this video with them. I have been there, and I wish I knew about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder 5 years ago in the way that I do now. And go ahead and hit subscribe on your way out the door. See ya.